Head, but see how it goes. All right, welcome everybody. We're going to talk today about Engineer's Guide to Preparing for a Layoff. This presentation is really particular right now with everything going on in the community, in the tech community. When I first sat down to write this, I had a few people on LinkedIn that said that they were laid off and a few people that came up to me and talked about it, but that was about it. And now looking at the presentation, it was very, very timely because right after I released this presentation, right after I started talking about it at the conference, we had Facebook layoffs, we had Meta layoffs, we had Pluralsight recently by us, we had Podium, we had all sorts of companies all around the valley here in Utah that really got impacted by this layoff. So it was very important that we started talking about it now. And this presentation is really going to give you a guidebook for things that you should do all the time during your career, not just when you're laid off. This should be stuff that you're doing all the time. That's what I'm really pushing in this presentation. So about me, myself, I've been working in databases for about 15 years now. I currently work as a database engineer for Entrata. I also do consulting on the side. So if you have any problems with SQL Server, Postgres, anything like that, I help out with that a lot. I do a lot of volunteering. I run Utah Geek Events, which puts on different conferences for the community. And then I've been blogging lately on my blog at, you can see right there, SQL Asylum. I did just publish this blog today too. I'll show it here really quickly. If you go out to that blog link, this publish is the Engineer's Guide to Layoffs right here, a checklist. So all the stuff I'm going to talk about today is actually in this blog post as well. And that blog post will have a link to this recording once the recording is done. So, but let's go ahead and get started. And as of course, if you have any questions, please ask them in the chat or just interrupt me and let me know. All right, so why is this so important? Why is it? It's funny that I have to even put this slide of why. Why does it matter about layoffs or anything like that? I mean, everybody right now is feeling the impact of this. Everyone right now is seeing it. So most people are like, why do you even have this slide? What I want to commit here on this why is that it's not just about being laid off or anything else. It's about getting ready for that layoff situation. It's about making sure that you're in the right mindset to do and to handle the layoff when it comes, because it's not about if, it's about when. Okay, so it will happen to you. And the reason I really put it together right now was because we had all of this come out. This one's a little bit older because I did this presentation in early November. This was starting with Stripe. Stripe had a bunch of layoffs right at the beginning of the month. And so that was where I really started to talk about it. And I said, oh my gosh, we got to start talking about this. And then I actually looked up and I said, whoa, now who has actually laid off? And at this time, this is a site out there that tracks layoffs and things like that. And we had Twitter and Stripe and Lyft and all these other companies. And then Meta announced. And then here in Utah, we had Podium and Pluralsight and a bunch of other companies. And so all of a sudden, this was a big, huge storm of people laying off in different places. And a lot of people will say to me, well, was this just a crazy storm that happened? Not if you really look at the data for the past couple of years. There is always a trend to have a November, December sort of layoff because businesses are trying to make ending deadlines, ending commitments for money and other things like that. So I wasn't too far out of my shock zone, but the numbers that we had this year were really bad. And so I want to make sure that everybody understands that it's not just a normal thing, but it does happen. So it's something to keep in mind. And I wanted to really bring up that a lot of people were very, very upset about this, and obviously they should be. It's a very difficult time. There should be nothing wrong with you being upset about the situation that you're in because of being laid off. I'm going to talk specifically about how to handle it and how to deal with it towards the end of this presentation, but I want to make sure everybody understands we should not be looking at these people as bad or negative or something's wrong with them. We should be looking at them as, okay, how do we help? How do we get moving forward? How do we get them into their next position? And the person themselves should not feel like it's personal. I've come across this many, many times. I keep saying to everybody, it's typically 100% not personal. Now, I have to change that right now because I've heard of a few layoffs that said that they not only laid off, but they laid off people that were lower performers, which is, in my opinion, wrong, but it has been happening. So sometimes I have to question that if a company did that, did they do it for the wrong reasons? And I think they did, but that's, again, not something I can control. So this is really the key things about this. And this is one of those statements here too, that layoffs make you incredibly angry. I agree. They should make you incredibly angry, and we need to find ways to move forward and what we can do about it. And this presentation is all about getting you ready to handle something like this in the future. We had one person in this presentation today that is brand new to the engineering field too as well. These are things you should be doing all the time in your life as an engineer, every single time. So let's talk about the steps that you need to do to get ready for a layoff. Okay, I'm going to go kind of step by step. I kind of show this picture one because IKEA is the easiest furniture in the world to put together, right? We all love it. I'm totally joking, but the pictures are very step by step. And this is my step by step view of what I would do. So we're going to talk about acceptance. The most important thing we're going to talk about is being prepared. I was a Boy Scout. I learned that motto very well. I did it all the time. Be prepared is very important. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot of. We're going to talk about handling the layoff, and then we're going to talk about some of the things you can do to move forward. All right, so the first thing that you have to accept is that you were laid off or something happened. You have to accept that this happened to you. You can't really change this. It's something that's there. So the first thing you need to do is accept it. And the second thing I keep talking about is own your career. What do I mean by own your career? When you come down to things like, hey, should I do this training or should I do this training that my company supports or something else? What if the company doesn't pay for my training? What if the company doesn't want to teach me a new technology or something? You need to own your own career. The person that's going to invest the most in you is you, okay? No one else, no other company on the planet is going to invest as much into you as you are. So owning your own career means as you go through your jobs, as you do different things, you need to say to yourself, I'm going to invest this time into me for certain reasons, not anything else. And so you have to sometimes do that. It's not always easy to do, but you do have to do that. You have to own it. I also believe that accepting the layoff and saying, yep, this happened to me, this is what I'm going to do, it's your way of moving forward with it in the future. So how do you do some of these things? There's a book out there called Change Anything, the idea and science of change. And one of their favorite themes is visit your default future. What does your default future mean? Your default future means that if you do not change anything you're doing right now, if you just stay exactly the same way as you are, you have a default future. And what does that future look like? Now, some of us have, let's say, parents to look at. And they say, well, that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be my parent. Someone may have somebody else older in the community that they can look at, or someone that's different. You can see what those people have done because they are the same thing as you and they have the same amount of time. So you have to think about how to visit your default future and how to say, if I do nothing else differently in 5-10 years, what am I going to look like? And if you don't like what you see in that mirror, you need to change it. That's the whole purpose of what you need to say to yourself. And then people say to you, well, that's great, Pat. That's simple. You're just saying, go ahead and change. It's not that easy. No, it's not that easy. You have to visit that default future over and over and over again. Every day, every time, every concept. I use this heavily for myself when I'm trying to lose weight, when I'm trying to exercise, any of those things. When you're trying to do those things, what's the first thing that you say is, let's not do it. Where is the donut? Somebody give me a donut as fast as humanly possible. They are my kryptonite. I love them. So every time I see a donut, I have to say to myself, no, I do not want to eat that donut because I want my default future to be different. So those are the things that you have to do that. I'm just reading through some of the comments, make sure I got them. They're good comments, excellent. Yes, full of chapters. I love that, Shelley. I love that analogy. So tell yourself not if, but when. When you are in careers and in jobs, tell yourself that there is a possibility of being laid off. I've got a slide here in a second. We'll talk about companies, but I really want to drill this point home is that I don't care how loyal you feel to the company. I don't care how much you love the company. The company can and will lay you off if they have to. The company's job is to make money. The company's job is to keep going. It's not to actually make you a happier person. I love some of the companies I've worked for. I've worked for companies that I have literally thousands of pictures of wonderful times with these people and individuals. But the truth of the matter is that the company is there to keep moving. It is not there to grow you. It is there to grow itself. That's its job. So always keep that in mind when you're thinking about if, not when. Also, the be afraid. Everybody asks me like, why do you have be afraid on this slide? Why is this a good idea? Why should we be anxious about something like our career? Why should we worry about something like this? The only point I want to make here is that I don't want you on pins and needles all the time. I don't want you always sitting there worried about losing your job or anything, but I do want you to have a little bit of a heightened sense of fear. When you have a little heightened sense of fear, you're more acute, you're more aware, you're more, you recognize things more around you. So it's a good idea to have just a little bit of that fear, that understanding that, hey, what if this doesn't work out? What if this project doesn't go the way I want it to go? What if these things don't happen the way I want it to happen? There needs to be a little bit of fear and apprehension inside there. It makes you a little more heightened, a little better off. So I don't want it all the time. I'm not telling you to be anxious constantly or anything like that, but you want a little bit of that inside there. This picture, funny enough, this was, I was at a hotel in Spokane, Washington, and they had a bake-off contest for gingerbreads. I promise no gingerbreads were harmed in the making of this picture. It is fake fire on there, but I thought it was really funny that the pigs being roasted over a spigot. That's what they created for that. So, all right. So let's start getting into the actual be prepared section of this. And this is really the next 3 slides. It's 90% of what we're going to talk about, because what I'm trying to get you ready for is to deal with a layoff when they come up. Lisa, thank you for the mentioning inside the owning career for the chat. That's good points to make too. Excellent, thank you. Please read the chat also if you get a chance for that. So the first thing you should do, the most important thing you should do, is start talking about your network. And I talk to people all the time about this. I talk to engineers all the time, and they're saying, well, shouldn't I learn the latest technology? What if I knew C# better? What if I knew Linux better? What if I could do this better? What if I learned AWS? What if I got 5 different certifications? I say, no, the most important thing you can have is a network, period. I don't want to hear anything about you are the most expert person in this or that. If you do not have a network, you do not have a place to go and get a job. It's that simple. The first thing you do when you get laid off is you contact your network. You don't go try to look at your certification or get a new certification. You go and try to contact your network. That's what everybody's doing. I'm posting on LinkedIn. They're posting that I'm out of a job. I need to find a job. So you need your network. The most important thing you can do in your career as you move forward is keep your network alive and keep networking with other people. So simple way to do that. Very, very simple. Everyone can do this. Go to your calendar right now, schedule a reminder, calendar appointment, whatever, to schedule lunch with your network once a quarter, once a month, whatever you want to do on some sort of cadence. Have that reminder come up, say the first Monday of the month, and tell you, I need to schedule lunch with a bunch of friends, bunch of coworkers, bunch of workers. I need to get together with other people and network with them. Touch base with them, see how things are going, talk to them about projects you're running, talk to them about projects they're doing. That will keep your network alive, okay? That more than anything else should be your number 1 takeaway from this session, is that you need to have a network and you need to keep it alive by talking to it, communicating with it. And yes, if you're remote, they need to be Zoom meetings like this, do Zoom meetings. Google Hangouts is 100% free. You can have tons of people in them. You can do it for free. You can sit there and chat. Everybody can grab a drink or something else, and you can just sit there and relax. So anything you can do to keep those networks going, that's going to be your best friend anytime a layoff comes. These other ones, attend meetups, attend users groups. I have been harping on this for 15 years because I've ran several meetups. I've started several meetups. I've been telling people over and over again, even if you're not into the topic, you should be going for the networking. Today, when we started this meetup, we introduced everybody. Everybody got to say hi to each other. Now, normally, if we were in an office, we would be able to get to talk and chat and network a lot more. But even just meeting people like this, we can still talk and chat. We can still say, hey, you know, David, what about this? What did you look at this position or something like that? That's networking. That's giving you a chance to see other things. So meetups and users groups are your best friends. I tell people in college all the time, when they come to me as college students and they say, what's the number 1 thing I can do to get a job? Should I ace my test? Should I work harder on these things? I say, no, you should be out there attending meetups and users groups. I love your professors. They do wonderful work to teach you things, but honestly, they're not going to hire you. The people that are going to hire you are at those meetups and users groups. They're the ones that are going to give you a job, and that's who you need to be talking to. So you need to make sure you're out there and talking to them all the time. Okay. Conferences, another great one. And this one's a little controversial, but a lot of people ask me about this is what if my company won't pay for conferences? They won't send me anytime. They won't give me time off and they won't send me. Find a way to make that happen for yourself, because conferences are one of your greatest places to get networking with other people in your tech community, whether it's a Linux conference or a .NET conference or a cloud conference or whatever kind of conference it is, you're going to meet other people in your community that are doing the same thing as you, and that's invaluable to your future career. Yes, it's a huge expense, but I already stated earlier, you have to invest in yourself. And I understand budgets and kids and all that sort of things. I've had to do all those things. That's why you got to start thinking about that and say, how can I invest in myself and attend these sort of things? If you have free conferences around you, great. That's wonderful. Go to those. We have one. Utah Geek Events puts on 2 to 3 conferences a year. We'd love to see you out at them. The Silicon Slopes event is pretty much free to a lot of people. If you really need a ticket, Clint said many times, he'll get you a ticket. He's not going to stop you from getting a ticket. So some of those things you should do no matter what. And then another really good one is just scheduling regular LinkedIn and blog posts. Now, this doesn't have to be the greatest blog post ever written. This does not have to be, here's how the system works from a global standpoint or something else. This just has to be something to keep you active. This could be a LinkedIn post where you regularly just comment on other people's topics. There's a lot of things on LinkedIn right now that you can talk about. There's a lot of layoffs to be talking about. So you could be commenting on other people's things and saying, hey, I'm looking as well, or hey, I've seen this position. Just reaching out and doing that helps you to stay active on LinkedIn, and that's important. And I know that it's questionable which social media network, or I mean social network to really mess around with or anything like that. Is it Twitter? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Mastodon? Is it any of these things? Don't worry about specifically which one. Find out what your community, whatever technology or whatever community you're in, and kind of focus on that community. Don't worry about which one you're using. Worry about being part of the community. That's the big thing. I can't tell you all the ones that are out there or what they're going to be used. I mean, I work in the Postgres community. There's a Postgres mailing list. I haven't done mailing lists for a while, but there's a mailing list. So it just depends on what community you're working in. Go to where that community is. Maybe there's a Slack for the community and you can use Slack. Whatever it is, find that and make sure you're active in it. So, and I'll mention this picture right here. I'm going to take a quick thing. This is the one that I really wanted to bring up. Job stability. I took this off of a Twitter account. I can't remember whose, but I saw this posted. Job stability is an illusion. No job is 100% safe. This is a very, very simple concept, but very hard to understand, especially if you've been at a company for a long time or if you've been very loyal to a company. You're saying to yourself, there's no way they're going to let me go. I've got all these projects. I got all these things are going on. It doesn't come down to that. It comes down to numbers. 9 times out of 10, a layoff is nothing more than we have a balance sheet. Here's a bunch of numbers, and those numbers have figures tied to them, and we have to change those figures. And that's it. They don't even know the people that are behind it a lot of the times, because they do that in a way so that it doesn't feel like they're, really hurting themselves or something else. So make sure that you understand that no job, and I say no job, is 100% safe. It's just the way the world works. Businesses do not operate that way, that everyone is guaranteed no matter what. So if you keep that in mind, again, this doesn't mean you can't be loyal to your company. It just means that you have to keep that in mind, that their best interest is going to be the company's best interest, not yours. All right, any questions on these first be prepared ones? We're going to go to another one here in just a second. All right. Okay. Now, this is a favorite one of mine. Always be looking. So, good friend of mine, names of the conferences. I'll put the names of the conferences in the chat or on my website. UtahGeekEvents.com is where you always want to go, Anthony, is for any information. Always be looking. I love this one. And a former manager of mine kind of always said this to us all the time. I kind of was always doing this anyways, but what does it mean by always be looking? It means that when someone comes to you and say, hey, I got this great opportunity out here at this other company, we've got this data science opportunity. You just got to hear about it. Come on, come to lunch with me and come and hear about it. Go. Go and hear about it. You're not doing any disservice to your company. You're not doing your disservice to anybody else, because you need to understand what else is out there, what's available, and you need to practice that networking with other people. So sure, maybe you're 100% happy in your company. Don't get me wrong. You could be could be the greatest company you've ever worked for. You love it, but that means that you'll just stay. That's fine. You'll hear about it. And you'll say, look, I think you've got a great thing going there, but I really love where I'm at. I'm going to stay there. So that's the point here, is that always be looking, interviewing, and talking to people. So I don't know that I would go to the interview level unless you feel like you're close to that. That's a decision you have to make, but it is a good idea to practice interviewing with other people throughout your career. I strongly suggest that if you don't do regular interviews or something, that you just get together with friends and you try to do an interview here and there, because it's a good skill to keep sharp when you're doing it. If you're in a management role or something, you might have done a lot of interviewing, so you don't have to do a lot of interview practice because you've done so much of it the other way. But if you're not in a management thing, if you're an individual contributor and you don't interview very often, it's not a bad idea to get with a few other people and just practice some interviews. There's also a ton of job fairs out there and employment fairs and things like that that you can go to and practice interviewing. Even if it's for a different role that you're not really interested in, it just gives you that interview practice that you can do. So always be looking, always talk to other companies. Don't think of it as bad if you're talking to another company. Don't tell your boss. I mean, maybe you do have to tell your boss, I'm going to the dentist today. No, you're not. I'm going to the dentist in a 3-piece suit. Yep, that's totally it. No. I like to just be upfront and honest with my boss, and I like to just say, look, this is part of my life. I'm a part of the community. I talk to people a lot. I will go to lunch. I will have meetings. Some of those will turn into job offers. If I'm happy where I'm at, I'm going to stay. If I'm not, I'm going to entertain these offers. That's just the way it works. That is the way it works, and that's the way it should work. So people should understand that. Volunteer. So volunteering is just a good way, as you can see from me here, that I volunteer a lot. Volunteering in the community, whether you're doing it with technology or even if you're doing, say, Red Cross or Habitat for Humanity or anything else, you meet a lot of other people that are also volunteering, and that shows that you can network and meet with other people. It also shows people that you have passion and drive to do something better for other people. So it's a way to show a lot of good experience with volunteering. Again, this doesn't have to be technology volunteering. This can simply be helping build homes or something else. Okay, I was just reading through the comments and making sure that I don't have any questions inside there. So volunteer whenever you can. It's a good idea, regardless of whether it's related to technology or not. Except lunch. So this one's a tough one. What I mean by this is that you're going to run into some presentations and things like that that are sales-based presentations. So a good example of this is if you're in the data science world right now, you've probably heard from Snowflake, Databricks, Tableau, ClickView, somebody like that. They always want to take you out to do golf, or they want to take you out to food or do something like that. Go. I know. If you're an engineering person and you're like, oh, I just don't really want to deal with the salespeople and everything else, you still need to go. And you need to go because there's going to be other people there that you can network with that are more likely related to the community, and you can start talking to them. I went to one of these events recently. I promoted a lot of the stuff Utah Geek Events was doing, and I talked to a new company about what they were working on and how they were doing it. For me, that's a chance to possibly work in the future with that company. They were a small company. They now know my name. I can talk to them, and I can remember them for future events. That's the important part to this. It's not necessarily the technology or the salespeople that you're going there for. It's for the other people that are there. So I understand it's not our favorite thing to do as engineers, to go and listen to a sales presentation or something else, but the networking opportunities are huge. And you probably get free lunch out of it. It's usually pretty good. Maybe you'll get free Top Golf or something like that. So whenever you see these come up, go to them. And again, I know the next thing you're going to say to me is, there's no way, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I've got all these tasks I need to get done. Go back to what I said earlier. Invest in yourself. I understand that your job is very, very busy. I've been the only person on call as a DBA for several years at a company. I had times when I couldn't even take a Saturday off because I was doing on-call work over and over and over again. You still have to find times to invest in yourself. You have to say, I'm not going to be here for this time. You have to find that balance, because if it's not for yourself, it's not going to get you anywhere. You could say to the future company, oh, I worked on call and I did all these things wonderfully, but that's not going to help that future company. That helps that company that you're currently with. So always think about your balance. Always talk about how you can do those things and take that time. Okay. Present. presenting. I cannot stress this enough. I've mentioned this over and over again to people. When you are the presenter, you are seen as an expert in your community. It doesn't mean that you're the smartest person in the room. It just means that you're seen as the expert in the community on whatever you're presenting on. I have had more contracts and more companies come to me because I presented on something and they said, hey, we really liked that. Can you come and do that for us? And then I got side work or contract work because of that, or a future job because of that. I was actually interviewed at one of my conferences. I kid you not, one of my conferences, I was being courted by a certain company here in Salt Lake City, and they wanted me to come work for them. So they sent all of their engineers, 20 engineers in the same shirt, sponsoring the company, into my SQL presentation. And they literally asked me questions about how to fix their system during that presentation. That was my interview. A couple of weeks later, they kept taking me out to lunch, kept doing it more and more. And finally, I agreed to go work with them. And literally, when I got there, they're like, oh, Pat, yeah, you solved like 3 problems for us in that one presentation. So we hired you. That was my interview process. I didn't interview anything differently than that. So presenting is important to do. You don't have to do something big like a conference right off the bat or anything. Find a meetup. I can tell you there is over 100 meetups in Salt Lake City right now, and they're all looking for presenters. I help run 2 to 3 meetups, and we are looking for presenters every month, no matter what. So if you have a topic you can talk about, present on it. And it doesn't have to be, even if you are brand new to the topic, understand that you can still do it. You have a perspective that old senior engineers and stuff don't. You have a perspective that's brand new, so you can still present and teach something to other people. So don't be afraid of that side. Just get out there and present. You can present at work too first. If you start at a lunch and learn or the brown bag lunches, things like that, start small and then work yourself up from there. So it's very important to present whenever you can. Now, I put loyalty on here. I put this picture down here at the bottom. I found out this gentleman from Brazil. I saw this on the news. It was really cool. He has worked at the same company for 84 years and 9 days. Okay, this is the definition of a loyal worker, okay? Very definition of a loyal worker. I don't know that I could ever do this, but my hat's off to this gentleman for doing something like this. And there is nothing whatsoever wrong with working for a company for 20 years, 30 years. If you're changing roles and you are happy, by all means do it. I'm not going to tell you not to. I'm going to tell you to do what you need to do to make yourself happy and enjoy your work. So if you are into that and you want to stay at one company, great. I have a friend that's worked at one company for 25 years, but he's done so many different roles. It's felt like he's changed companies every 5 or 6 years. And that's great. That's his work. He can do that. So there's nothing wrong with being loyal. Just understand the fundamental principle is that businesses are not necessarily loyal to you because you're not 100% safe. You are loyal to them, but they don't necessarily are going to be loyal to you when it comes time for layoffs. Okay. All right. I'm just reading through the comments here. Make sure there's nothing there. Any questions on this? Always be looking or be prepared. Yes, Lisa mentions that always looking can flow benefits back to the current employer because you're learning and offering. Absolutely. I try to tell companies I work for, you're getting a benefit if I do side work, and I do side work right now. I consult. And because I've learned about things in my consulting projects, I've learned about shipping industry, healthcare industry, insurance industry, financial industry. I've learned all of these because of side projects. I'm currently in the apartment industry is what I'm doing, but I know all of these other industries and all these other things because I've done that side work. So it's very important to keep those open minds and try different things. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so now I'm actually into the whole new skills. See, everybody asks me when they say, get prepared for a layoff, do you want to go and get the latest technology and learn it? Should I go take that AWS class? Should I go spend $5,000 on this big SQL training or something like that? Maybe. The point is that I put this at the very last of the list was on purpose. Those other 2 things are more important than this piece. Skills are very important. Skills are going to get you the job, but having a brand new skill after a layoff isn't going to help you that much, especially if you try to do something like deep dive into one skill, before you even land another job or something. That's not really what you want to do. You want to get a skill enough that you can talk about it, you can get started on it, and you can hit the ground running if a company needs you to do so. You don't need to write an entire project just on that skill to get your job. A lot of people feel like they have to, I have to learn everything about Docker. I have to know Docker inside and out because they listed Docker on the job description. No, you need to know how to use it. You need to know how to work with it. And that's probably it. Or ask the company, what is the level that you need to have there, and then work with them on that. Don't dive yourself too far into a technology just to do that, just for a job. Okay. If you want to learn it and you're passionate about it, please, by all means, go right ahead, but don't turn it into your linchpin for just getting a new job. The skills are less important than that network stuff that I was just talking about. All the networking is more important. I do suggest the second one, learn a technology you do not use at work. Again, work is about all the things you need to know at work. But if you learn a technology that you're passionate about outside of that, that could get you ready for a future job. Maybe there's another job out there that you want to learn. Postgres for me, I was a SQL Server person. I learned Postgres, and now I have a job working in Postgres. So if you want to learn another technology, you want to learn a different thing, great. Go ahead and do that and make it a different technology. Don't be afraid to learn a technology your company is not using. You're not wasting your time. You're investing in yourself. That's what's very important. Shelley mentions consider a different career path and look at entrepreneurs for skilled engineers. You could end up owning a part of a company. Excellent suggestion, Shelley. You can also consider going into entrepreneurship or something else. You have to reevaluate or rethink some of these things. We'll talk about pivoting in just a second. I told you I was going to talk about that. Don't deep dive, kind of mentioned that. Learn to present. We already talked about that heavily. And then the last one, you're also going to hate me for, but learn to sell and market. Unfortunately, in this day and age, you have to learn how to sell yourself a little bit. Every interview is really you trying to show the company that you have skills and talents that they need. They have things that you need. So you have to learn at least a little bit of selling. And this is very hard for engineers who are very much logical and they're analytical and they say to themselves, well, I'm never going to need to do that. We have salespeople for that. So you still have to learn to do it. You still have to be able to do it to an extent to get yourself those new positions and get yourself to do that. If you sell and market yourself a little bit as you go through your career, you're going to be a lot more valuable when it comes time to lay off or something else when something happens, because people are going to know about you. They're going to network. They're going to see these skills that are out there. So it's important for you to have some sales and marketing skills when you get to that point. And again, I don't love it or anything, but it's a necessary evil that has to be done. So any questions on the skills one? We had some comments in here. Yes, it does suck, but you have to do it. Pivot in technical sales, but with direct sales experience, it's hard to show that I can do the job. Yes, so I'll talk about this really quick, Matt, that you bring up an excellent point. If you're trying to pivot in a role and you are already at a job, if you are an engineer and you're trying to become a DBA, if you're a salesperson, you're trying to be a technical salesperson, if you're a data person, a DBA, and you're trying to become a data scientist, all of those pivots in a role in a company are good to kind of get your feet wet. But the truth is, when you actually want to become like an expert or a mid-level person in that, you usually have to leave the company to do that. And the reason is because at that company, you're still seen as that person that you were before. It's very, very, very hard in a company to break yourself from where you were before. Now, if you're in a very large organization, it's easier because they literally move you into a different region. And that's probably in a company, it's like a different company. Like I said, my friend done this 5 years, he feels like he's got a new job every time because it's so different working in different parts of the company. If you're in a smaller organization, like I said, I've been a DBA. When I became a DBA manager, that was very hard for me to stop doing the day-to-day DBA work. It's the same for data scientists, same for data engineers, same for sales, the technical sales, any of those things. So don't be afraid that if you're in one of those positions and you really want to move to something else and you really feel like you need to do it, don't be afraid to go out to another company to do that role change that you have to do to pivot. It's not easy, it's not simple, but it's something you might have to do. So excellent point, Matt, thank you. Okay, so now we're gonna get into some of the final things here. I'm pretty good on time. Again, any questions come up, but I'm pretty good on my time right now. Handling the layoffs. So I never really told you my story of layoffs, but this is what I'm gonna do right now so that I can talk about it. So way back in 2006, I worked for a startup company, and this was early days of startups. I worked there for about 3 years. we went from about 250 people down to about 40 people when I was laid off in 3 years. So that means that those 250 people, every about 3 to 6 months, we had these meetings where you would all of a sudden be on a calendar invite, and they would lay off 30 to 40 people at a time. And so every day when we came into this office, we didn't know if we'd have a job. We didn't know if the door would be closed and we would be completely shut out entirely, or we didn't know if we were going to be the next part of the layoffs. Now, I don't suggest this life for anyone, but it taught me the very important lesson that I'm trying to teach here, is that my job was not safe. It was not safe at all, and I knew that. And I did everything I could to not only work hard for that company to try to keep it going, but I also tried to work in the community and other things so that I could be prepared when I got laid off, because I knew it was coming. I knew that we were either going to make it or break it. That's really the only two options. And after about the 4th or 5th layoff, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to break it. we're not going to make it. We weren't going to do it. So I got laid off. I can't even remember the day, but basically the next day, that after I got laid off, I worked on a car all day. I like to work on old cars. This actually is mine. It's a 1969 Mustang. I bought this about 2 years ago. It looks still like this. I haven't touched it. But at that time, I was working on a different car, and I spent the entire day doing nothing but wrenching on that car. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't check any jobs. I didn't do any postings. It was my way to take the time off that I needed to process this and figure it out. I like to work on things that I can fix and finish. When you're doing software and bugs and engineering, you almost never finish things. They always come back. You're like, oh, didn't I fix that bug 3 weeks ago? Yeah, now I got to fix it again. With a car, if you fix something, typically it stays fixed. And so for me, that was my way of kind of taking the time off that I needed to do what I needed and to figure that out. And then after I worked on that car all day, the next day, I started calling. I started talking to people. I got onto LinkedIn. At this time, I was not nearly as well known in the community, but I still had some people that knew me in the community. So I reached out to them. I started talking, and in about a week and a half, I got a job. And then shortly after that, I got another job. It ended up being a great change for me to do because, one, I learned this lesson in this startup. I learned how to live and work in a startup, which, again, if nobody's ever done that, if you haven't done that and you have the ability to do it, I really suggest it. You find that you see the world a lot differently in a company when the company's literally telling you every week, well, we might make payroll and we might not. It's just a different world that you live in. But don't do it if you've got kids and not time and everything else. Please don't. It's dangerous times. But take the time you need to process, and then it helps you to make that pivotal change that I was talking about earlier. Sometimes it's like, okay, I've been laid off. I've got a little bit of time. Maybe you've got some severance and stuff like that. Maybe you can take a week or a weekend or something else. You have to decide what that time is, but that time should be your chance to talk about pivotal things. Talk about rethinking what you're doing. Talking about, do I still want to do this? Do I want to find something different? Do I want to push myself another direction? Those are questions you should be asking yourself during this time. But process first. Make sure you have accepted it first. My time during that day, I accepted that I was laid off. I accepted that I had to figure out what I needed to do. I had a 1-year-old child at the time and a 3-year-old child at the time, and I needed to figure out what I needed to do, and I needed to get another job. And so that's where I went to and did that. I can't tell you how to do that. That is for you to figure out, but you need to figure it out and you need to accept it and then see how you can pivot to what you're doing in the future. So post and share through your network. I keep seeing some of these negative posts from people on LinkedIn. They're like, oh, we got a bunch of people complaining about laid off or something like that. There's no complaining about being laid off. If you're laid off, you absolutely 100% should be posting and announcing it to your social network. If you want to put a personal message in there, put a personal message in there. I do not subscribe to the idea that LinkedIn is only professional and that's all it can be, because we're not only professional in our jobs. How many people that you work with right now, your coworkers, do you know their family? Do you know their kids? Do you know their wives? Do you know their husbands? Do you know everything about them or other things about them? That's personal, okay? When you work with someone for that long and you do that much work, it's personal. So don't think that you can't share that on LinkedIn. You need to share that on LinkedIn and tell people what's going on and announce it 100%. So last point here, and thank you, Lisa, for bringing that up. Leave well. What I mean by that is that you might be very, very angry. As a matter of fact, you should be very angry, but you need to not manifest that anger into something against your former employer. And I know a lot of people are going to say to me, but I really, really want to burn down their building or something. No, you can't do that. You've got to remember that your social network and everything else is still out there. You're still going to probably work with these people in the near future. If you were part of a big layoff, there's a good chance your friends are out there too. And there's a good chance that other people are going to leave the company, and there's a good chance you're going to work with them again. I always say that Salt Lake City is small Lake City, and any community you live in is small, and you're going to work together again. I work with people that I've worked with across the country again. I'm working with a team from Texas right now that I worked with 7 or 8 years ago. These are people that I knew then, and now I know them now again. So don't ever burn that bridge of when you leave or get laid off. Make sure you leave well. I'm not saying that you have to say wonderful things about your company that you got laid off from. You can say they didn't handle this well. They didn't do this well. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that to voice your opinion, but don't slander them or say this was the worst company I ever worked for, things like that. Make sure that you can still get hired with the other people that are getting laid off as well. Yes, good point, Shelley. People always remember how you make them feel, and that's very important. So that's the issues on handling the layoff. Any questions around handling? All right. So, and then kind of one of my last slides here, I believe this is my last slide. This is one of probably the most important ones and one of my most important sayings that I've lived my life through for so many years. I actually have an entire presentation on failure. If you ever want to see that, I'll do it at another event. But keep moving forward is one of the most important things you can do. Layoffs are horribly hard on you. They're hard on your family. They're hard on everything. But no matter what, after that day of rest, after that day of figuring out or processing or 2 days or whatever it is, you have to get up and keep moving forward. That's the whole goal in life. You have to keep doing those things. This picture here was one of the photos that I take. All these backgrounds and pictures you see I've taken myself. This was a waterfall up a wonderful little canyon here in Salt Lake City. In this waterfall picture, I got across the river. There was a river right up at the top. Got across the river, set up my camera, took this picture, got this beautiful waterfall and everything else, started walking back across the river and promptly fell on my face really hard. Lost my glasses. They went down the river, never to be seen again. And I kind of got off to the side. I was able to get out of the river and everything. And you can see my legs here got really bad, you know, all scratched up and knocked up and everything. And some other hikers passed by, helped me out, got me a little calmer, helped me with some Band-Aids and stuff. And I did some first aid here to get myself down. But then I basically said to myself, well, I don't have my glasses. I did have sunglasses so I could still see. I don't have my glasses and my legs are killing me, but I have to get down this trail. I have to get back to my house. There's no way around this. I have to move forward. I can't just sit here all day and nobody else was coming up. So I'm like, well, I got to get walking. So while it hurts and it didn't feel good, I started walking and I started moving. You have to keep moving forward no matter what, because it's very important to just keep that momentum going. Yeah, Shelley, you can share in just 1 second. So the original Keep Moving Forward I got was really from Walt Disney. He kind of said this quote from "We keep moving forward, opening new doors." If you ever want to see an excellent Keep Moving Forward statement too, watch one of the Rocky movies. If you look up YouTube, Rocky, Keep Moving Forward, it's an excellent take on it. And again, I know Rocky is kind of a movie and everything, but just that clip, just where he talks about it, it's a perfect explanation of exactly this idea. So, okay, so really quick, I am going to go ahead and this is the end of the session. So I want to really thank everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. You can get all of my information right there. I'll leave this slide up while we're talking here for a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and then we can have a chat here as well. But again, really appreciate everybody coming. You're welcome to leave if you don't have any other questions or comments, but let me go ahead and stop this. So let's see here.